The Threshold Expanse had been contested territory for 11 years, fought over by three powers who agreed on almost nothing except that none of them could afford to let the other two claim it outright. The Kaelin Ascendancy held the northern approach. The Ophir Dominion held the trailing edge. The Ashvane Cartel, less a nation than a coalition of independent fleets bound by shared opportunism, controlled whatever the other two weren't actively defending at any given moment. The war between them had no fixed front line and no realistic end date, only a slow, grinding attrition that had, over a decade, claimed more ships than any single power in the sector could afford to keep losing. It was into the middle of this, a debris-choked stretch of contested space currently hosting an active three-way engagement between 40 Kaelin vessels, 31 Ophir vessels, and an estimated Ashvane presence nobody had managed to count accurately in years, that a single human cruiser dropped out of fold transit with a navigational error margin that suggested, to every sensor operator watching across all three fleets, a ship that had made a very serious mistake. Admiral Dune of the Kaelin Ascendancy received the contact report with something between irritation and amusement. His forward line was, at that exact moment, exchanging fire with an Ophir flanking squadron, and the appearance of an unregistered single vessel in the middle of an active engagement struck him as, at best, an inconvenience. Designation, he asked his tactical officer. Unregistered configuration, sir. Hull markings translate roughly to UES Meridian. Human. Single cruiser class vessel, standard crew complement for its size. No escort. Dune allowed himself a short, dismissive sound that his species used for something between a laugh and a sigh. One human ship, alone, in the middle of the Threshold Expanse's worst active engagement in 6 months. Either they are remarkably lost, or remarkably desperate. Either way, it changes nothing about our current engagement. Detach one squadron to deal with it and continue the primary advance. Across the debris field, aboard his own flagship, Marshal Talus Rowe of the Ophir Dominion registered the same contact with a similar lack of concern, and reached, independently, an almost identical conclusion. A single human vessel is not a factor in this engagement, he told his staff. If it comes within range of our forward line, treat it as we would any unregistered civilian craft caught in a war zone. Disable it, claim whatever cargo it carries, and continue the advance against the Kaelin flank. Neither commander was aware, in that moment, that the third power present in the Expanse, the loosely coordinated captains of the Ashvane Cartel, had already reached the same assessment and dispatched 3 independent raiding vessels toward the Meridian's position, each captain hoping, privately, to claim whatever bounty a stranded human cruiser might represent before either of the larger powers got there first. 3 empires. 3 separate decisions, made independently, within the same 90 seconds, all reaching the identical conclusion that a single unescorted human vessel, appearing in the middle of the sector's worst active war zone, represented nothing more than an easy prize to be claimed on the way to a larger objective. All 3 would spend the next several hours discovering, in escalating and increasingly uncomfortable detail, exactly how wrong that conclusion was. Captain Dana Kestrel had not chosen the Threshold Expanse as a destination. She had chosen it as the only remaining option. 6 days earlier, a distress beacon registered to a civilian survey team 11 Earth researchers, cataloging a resource-rich debris field on a contract that had, at the time it was signed, not accounted for the Expanse becoming an active war zone again, had gone silent mid-transmission. The last confirmed data placed them in a shielded research outpost near the Expanse's contested core, directly inside the current front line of the three-way conflict. No diplomatic channel could secure safe passage through active hostilities between 3 powers who barely acknowledged each other's legitimacy, let alone a request from a species with only recently established standing in the sector. Earth's Defense Council had authorized exactly one option: send a single ship, fast enough to avoid sustained engagement, and rely on its actual capabilities rather than any diplomatic protection to get 11 people out alive. The Meridian was, on paper, an unremarkable cruiser, a hull classification any of the 3 warring powers would have assessed, correctly, as smaller and less heavily armed than their own frontline vessels. What the Meridian's registry did not reflect, because Earth's Defense Council had specifically chosen not to disclose it to any external registry, was 6 years of quiet retrofit work that had replaced nearly every core system beneath the hull's unremarkable exterior, adaptive shielding capable of redistributing sustained damage across the entire hull in real time, a precision weapons suite designed for surgical disabling rather than raw destructive output, and a full drive recalibration that gave the ship maneuverability considerably beyond anything its outward classification suggested. "They're going to see one small cruiser and assume it's an easy target," said Commander Rafael Odieno, the Meridian's executive officer, reviewing the tactical situation as the ship dropped into the Expanse. 3 separate powers, all of them already fighting each other, all of them about to assume the same thing about us at the same time. Let them assume it, Kestrel said. We're not here to fight anyone. We're here to get 11 people off that outpost and leave. If any of the 3 decide that's a problem, we handle exactly enough of a problem to make them stop being one, and nothing more than that. Lieutenant Mira Solberg, the ship's chief engineer, ran a final systems check from her station. Shielding's at full calibration. Weapon suite is set to disabling yield defaults across the board, exactly like you specified. She paused. Captain, 3 separate contacts are already moving toward our position. Doesn't look like any of them coordinated it. Looks like they all just had the same idea independently. Then we're about to teach 3 empires the same lesson at the same time, Kestrel said. Take us in. Survey outpost first. We deal with anything that gets in the way of that, and only that. The Kaelin Squadron Dune had detached 11 vessels, more than adequate by any conventional assessment to disable a single unescorted cruiser closed on the Meridian's position with the confident, unhurried formation of a force that had run this exact scenario against unregistered civilian traffic many times before. Their opening volley struck the Meridian's shielding across its forward quarter and registered, on every Kaelin targeting display, as a clean, textbook hit against a vessel with no business surviving sustained fire from 11 ships at once. The Meridian did not slow down. Its shielding absorbed the volley and redistributed the load across the hull's full adaptive lattice in under 2 seconds, a response no Kaelin engineering officer watching the readout had a framework to explain, because nothing in Kaelin registry data suggested human shielding technology operated anywhere close to this specification. Continue fire, the Kaelin squadron commander ordered, more out of confusion than confidence. Concentrate on the forward emitter. The second volley produced the same result. The Meridian's course toward the contested research outpost did not deviate by a single degree. Kestrel's voice came over an open channel to the Kaelin squadron, calm and entirely without hostility. This vessel is not engaged in your conflict and does not intend to be. We are proceeding to a civilian outpost within this system to conduct a rescue operation. If you continue to fire on us, we will be forced to disable your vessels to complete that objective. We would strongly prefer not to. The squadron commander, unaccustomed to a target offering a warning before responding rather than after, ordered a third volley regardless. The Meridian's response was immediate and precise, a coordinated disabling strike across the squadron's propulsion systems, delivered in a single pass that left all 11 Kaelin vessels drifting, weapons and engines dark, without a single hull breach or confirmed crew casualty across the entire engagement. The squadron commander stared at his own darkened tactical board in a silence that stretched several seconds before he finally opened a channel back to Admiral Dune. "Sir," he said. "The human vessel disabled the entire squadron in a single pass. No casualties. No hull damage. It's still proceeding toward the outpost." Dune, monitoring the exchange from his flagship, said nothing for a long moment. "Recall the squadron," he finally said. "Do not engage further until I understand what we're actually dealing with." Marshal Rowe received word of the Kaelin squadron's disablement within the hour, through the kind of battlefield intelligence sharing that happened not out of cooperation but out of mutual necessity in a 3-way war where information about a new threat mattered more, in the moment, than which side technically owned it. Rowe's assessment of the situation differed from Dune's in one critical respect. Where Dune had reacted with caution, Rowe saw opportunity. A vessel capable of disabling an entire Kaelin squadron without taking damage represented, in his calculation, a technological advantage worth considerably more than the momentary risk of testing it directly, provided the Dominion could capture rather than destroy it. If that ship's shielding and weapons technology is what the Kaelin engagement suggests, Rowe told his tactical staff, acquiring it, even partially, changes the balance of this entire war in our favor. Dispatch a boarding-capable task force. I want that vessel disabled and captured, not destroyed. The Ophir task force, 16 vessels, including 2 dedicated boarding cruisers equipped with grappling and breach technology, intercepted the Meridian 11 minutes from the research outpost, deploying in a coordinated pincer formation designed to corner rather than simply outgun the target. "They're trying to box us in," Otieno reported, watching the formation develop. "Looks like they want to capture the ship, not destroy it." "Understood," Kestrel said. "Mira, status on the outpost survivors?" Still reading 11 confirmed life signs, stable, sheltered position, Solberg reported. "We're 9 minutes out if we don't get delayed." "Then we don't get delayed," Kestrel said. She opened the channel to the Ophir formation. Marshal Rose Task Force, this vessel does not intend to become anyone's captured asset. You have the same warning I extended to the Kaelin Squadron. I'd rather not repeat the outcome. The Ophir Task Force did not withdraw. Its boarding cruisers advanced, deploying grappling systems designed to physically anchor a target vessel for forced breach technology that had never, in Dominion military history, failed to secure a target considerably better defended than a single unescorted cruiser. The Meridian's response, calibrated by Solberg specifically for this scenario, was a short-range disabling pulse targeted precisely at the grappling system's power feeds, severing the boarding cruiser's capture capability before either vessel came within physical contact range. The remaining 14 escort vessels, attempting a coordinated pincer closure, found their formation disrupted by a series of precise, individually targeted strikes against propulsion systems, only each ship disabled in sequence, never more than one target struck at a time, the entire 16-vessel formation reduced to a drifting, propulsion-dead perimeter within 4 minutes, without a single confirmed casualty. Rowe watched the engagement collapse on his tactical display and, for the first time since committing the task force, said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried none of his earlier confidence. "Recall remaining forces," he said. "Do not attempt further engagement. I need to understand what that ship actually is before I commit anything else against it." Word of 2 failed engagements, one Kaelin, one Ophir, each conducted by a force considerably larger than the single vessel they'd failed to stop, reached the loosely coordinated captains of the Ashvane cartel within hours, spreading through the same informal battlefield intelligence networks that had carried news of the Kaelin squadron's disablement earlier that day. Warlord Grix Calder, the closest thing the cartel's current raiding coalition had to a unified commander, reached a conclusion neither Dune nor Rowe had, that both prior engagements had failed not because the human vessel was unstoppable, but because neither force had committed sufficient volume to overwhelm whatever precision-based defense system it was using. 2 fleets tried surgical engagement and got surgically dismantled in return, Calder told his assembled captains. The ship's advantage is precision, one target at a time, no wasted effort. We don't give it targets one at a time. We commit everything we have, from every vector simultaneously, and we see whether precision holds up against 40 ships attacking at once instead of 11 or 16. The Ashvane assault that followed was, by any measure, the largest single coordinated action the loosely allied cartel captains had mounted in over a year, 41 vessels, converging on the Meridian's position from every approach vector simultaneously, weapons hot, with explicit orders to disregard casualties among their own less valuable auxiliary craft if it meant overwhelming the target's response capacity. Aboard the Meridian, Solberg watched the convergence pattern complete and, for the first time since the mission began, allowed a note of genuine concern into her voice. 41 ships, full simultaneous convergence. That's not a formation designed to be boarded or captured. That's designed to overwhelm us through sheer volume. Options? Kestrel asked. The adaptive shielding can redistribute load across the full hull in real time, Solberg said. It's never been tested against this many simultaneous vectors at once. The models say we hold. I built the models. I'd still like more margin than the models say before I bet this ship and 11 survivors still 9 minutes from safety on it. We don't have time to wait for more margin, Kestrel said. Raphael, status on the outpost approach? We can reach them in 6 minutes if we hold current course, Otieno said. Diverting to fully engage this formation costs us that window. Kestrel made the decision without further deliberation. We hold course. Full shielding to forward and lateral quarters. Mira, if they want volume, give them a response that ends this in one pass rather than a drawn-out engagement. We don't have time for anything else. Solberg's answer was the Meridian's full disabling yield weapon suite, deployed not in the sequential single-target pattern used against the Kaelin and Ophir forces, but in a single coordinated spread pattern across the entire converging formation simultaneously, trading precision for speed, calibrated to disable propulsion across as many vessels as possible in one pass rather than methodically working through targets one at a time. The Meridian's shielding absorbed the 41-ship convergence for 11 seconds longer than any prior engagement, and long enough that Solberg's diagnostic board flagged a stress warning she chose not to voice aloud in the moment before the full disabling spread fired, propulsion systems failing across 33 of the 41 Ashvane vessels within the same 6-second window. The remaining 8 vessels, watching 33 of their formation go dark simultaneously, broke off the engagement without further order from Calder, who was, by that point, watching his own flagship's tactical display in a silence considerably longer than either Dune's or Rowe's had been. What happened next had, according to every historical account later compiled by neutral observers studying the engagement, never occurred before in the 11-year history of the Threshold Expanse conflict, within the same 2-hour window, operating on entirely separate command channels with no coordination between them. All three warring powers issued a full withdrawal order from the sector. Admiral Dune, reviewing the combined intelligence from all three engagements, his own squadron's disablement, the Dominion task force's failed capture attempt, and the Cartel's overwhelmed mass assault, reached his conclusion first. Whatever that ship is capable of, he told his staff, it has now defeated 3 separate engagement doctrines from 3 separate powers, disabling considerably more tonnage than it commands itself, without a single confirmed casualty on any side. I am not willing to commit further ascendancy assets to a war zone currently hosting a threat none of us understand and none of us have successfully countered. Order a full withdrawal to the northern perimeter. Marshal Rowe reached the same conclusion within the hour, for reasons that echoed Dune's almost exactly. We do not know what that vessel's actual capacity is, he told Dominion High Command. We know it has now exceeded the capability of everything we've thrown at it, 3 times, while deliberately avoiding lethal force each time. I do not know whether that restraint is a limitation or a choice. I am not willing to find out through further engagement. Withdraw the fleet. Warlord Calder, characteristically less formal than either of the larger powers' commanders, put it more bluntly to his assembled captains. We threw everything we had at one ship, and it stopped 33 of our vessels without killing anyone doing it. I don't know what it could do if it decided restraint wasn't the priority anymore, and I have no interest in finding out. Pull back. All of us. Today. By the time Captain Kestrel brought the Meridian to a stable hold above the research outpost, its evacuation shuttle already deploying to retrieve the 11 survivors, sensor logs from all 3 fleets confirmed the same remarkable fact: the Threshold Expanse, contested for 11 uninterrupted years by 3 warring powers, was, for the first time in over a decade, entirely empty of military presence from any of them. Captain Otieno said, watching the sensor returns confirm the full withdrawal, all 3 fleets are gone. Completely clear. Kestrel watched the confirmation scroll across her own display for a long moment before answering. We didn't come here to end their war, she said. We came here for 11 people. Let's finish that part, and let the rest of it be whatever it's going to be. News of the Threshold Expanse withdrawal spread through neutral diplomatic channels within days, carried less by any formal Earth announcement. Kestrel's mission report to Defense Council remained, deliberately, brief and unembellished, than by the independent accounts of all 3 withdrawing powers, each of whom found themselves, for very different reasons, needing to explain to their own leadership exactly why an 11-year war had paused because of a single unescorted cruiser. The Kaelin Ascendancy's official assessment, filed with its own military command and later shared, in a limited capacity, with Allied powers reviewing the incident, described the Meridian as possessing shielding and weapons capability substantially beyond any prior human demonstration on record, deployed with consistent, deliberate restraint despite clear tactical superiority in 3 consecutive engagements. The Ophir Dominion's assessment, considerably more cautious in tone, recommended a formal diplomatic reassessment of Earth's standing across the entire sector, noting that a species capable of fielding a single vessel with this capability, and choosing in every engagement not to use it lethally, represented an unknown quantity whose intentions matter considerably more than its capability, and whose capability we have clearly, and repeatedly, misjudged. Warlord Calder's account, circulated informally among the Ashvane cartel's loosely aligned captains, was shorter and considerably less diplomatic, but arrived at much the same conclusion the other 2 powers had reached independently, that whatever Earth actually was, it was no longer a species any of the 3 powers currently at war with each other could afford to treat as an afterthought. Ambassador Renata Boone recently elevated, after the Ilvani relief operation, to a considerably more senior standing within the Interstellar Assembly, received briefings from all 3 accounts within the same week, and found herself, for the second time in as many months, explaining to a chamber of skeptical delegates that Earth's actual capability had once again exceeded every prior assessment the Assembly had been working from. I would ask this body, she told the session reviewing the incident, to consider what it means that a single unescorted vessel, sent for a rescue mission and explicitly ordered to avoid unnecessary engagement, ended an 11-year war for an afternoon simply by existing in the same space as it. I am not certain what conclusion this body should draw from that. I am certain it should not be the conclusion that Earth remains a species this Assembly can continue to underestimate. The 11 survivors of the research outpost reached Earth 8 days later, exhausted but unharmed, their rescue barely mentioned in the same news cycles already consumed by accounts of the Threshold Expanse withdrawal, a fact that suited Kestrel's own preference for how the mission should be remembered considerably more than the alternative. They're going to keep writing about the war zone, Otieno said, as the Meridian made its final approach to Earth orbit. 3 empires and a single cruiser. Nobody's going to remember the part where we actually came here for 11 people. That's fine, Kestrel said. The 11 people will remember it. That's who this was actually for. 3 weeks after the mission, Lieutenant Solberg walked through the Meridian's engineering deck, running a final post-mission diagnostic on the adaptive shielding lattice that had, over the course of a single afternoon, absorbed sustained fire from 3 separate warfleets without a single confirmed failure. The stress warning she'd chosen not to voice during the Ashvane engagement sat quietly in the diagnostic log, a margin considerably thinner than she'd been comfortable with in the moment. We were closer to a real problem than I told the captain in the middle of it, she admitted to Otieno, reviewing the log together. Would telling her have changed the decision? Otieno asked. No, Solberg said. She'd have held course anyway. 11 people were still waiting. She closed the diagnostic file. I just wanted someone else to know how close it actually was. In a small archival office within the Interstellar Assembly's registry, a records clerk updated Earth's sector-wide capability assessment, finding an existing file that still described the Meridian's classification, prior to the mission, as standard cruiser class, unremarkable configuration. She sat with the entry for a long moment, reviewing the combined accounts from 3 separate former belligerent powers, each independently confirming a capability assessment none of them had believed possible from a single vessel, and typed a new classification, followed by a note her supervisor would approve without changes the following week. Reassessment based on Threshold Expanse incident. Single vessel demonstrated capability sufficient to independently repel coordinated engagement from 3 separate hostile powers without lethal force in any instance. Demonstrated restraint consistent across all 3 engagements despite escalating provocation. Recommend classification, capability profile unconfirmed pending further data, treat any single Earth vessel encountered in contested space as a potential strategic factor, not an incidental presence. No one ever revised it.